Masterminds have been around for a long time, right? But unless you had a bunch of extra income to throw at it, you couldn't be a part of it. Well, we wanted to solve that problem. And so we're bringing masterminds to you for free. Welcome to Mastermind for the Masses. All right, everyone. Hey, welcome to Mastermind for the Masses. We're excited today to have John Stio, the Vice President of Service Delivery with over a decade of experience in the entertainment industry. And now, what's really cool, you get to add Mastermind for the Masses guest to your long list of accolades. But welcome to the show, John.
Thanks, Josh. Good to be here.
Yeah, no, super excited to have you here. I know you listen to the show, so we do kind of a kickoff of what's going on this week. So I'm going to give you a chance to prepare as I throw it over to Shan and see what's been going on this week, Shan.
It's kind of finally a slow week. This weekend I had the first pop-up shop festival event for the clothing brand, and that one went really well, but it was due for a chaotic week of preparation for that weekend. So this week I'm kind of try to take it slow.
Nice. I am actually wearing the shirt I picked up at your pop-up stand tonight. So yeah, no, that was a cool event that you were part of, and got to get out there and listen to some live music and just kind of hang out. And get to buy a cool shirt. A few of them.
Yeah, I appreciate you popping in. It really meant a lot.
Yeah, man. No, it was awesome to see you out there doing your thing. Not only with Olive Bay, but Royal Beardsman tent right next to it too. It was really cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, Colby, what about you, sir? What you got going on this week? I noticed your background's not the normal background.
Yeah, it's a blurred out version of our new apartment. So we just moved to the South Carolina area recently, and as recently as in 2 days ago. So I've been very busy with the move, a bit tired, but excited to be on the podcast, and also excited for the new journey ahead of me. So should be fun.
Yeah, we're excited to follow along with what you got going on. And don't worry, because it looks like John found your background.
There we
go. So, John, what's going on with you this week, sir?
Let's see. I'm coming off a busy weekend. I was on the road. My son is a high school wrestler. Some of his team made it up to a state championship, so we went up to watch some of his teammates wrestle.
Nice.
So we had a 3.5 hour up, 3.5 hour home drive for that. So that was fun. I took a little CPR training this weekend as well. At work, I got some hiring going on, so I'm looking forward to getting some resumes. I have a support manager role open out in my LA office.
Oh, nice.
So doing that fun stuff. Other than that, just normal chaos at the office. Probably a basketball game this week for my other son. Usual dad work stuff.
Yeah.
So.
Sound busier than me, man. It's impressive. Just kind of give you guys a quick update for me this week. I actually, for the first time in quite some time, I got published this week. It's been a little while. I kind of took a break away from a lot of the different things I was doing while I was getting things in order, where I ultimately moved to a few years ago. But now that things are kind of back in the swing of it, I'm picking some of that stuff up again. So I got published in Construction Tech Review. It's a magazine around, obviously, construction and technology, as it would suggest. But really got to talk about basically building a bridge and creating that digital connection between the office and field workers. So it's kind of cool to get published again. It's been a little while. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Very neat.
So, but what we're really here tonight to figure out is what secret question or topic John has brought with him. Because as we know, we just hear it at the same time as all of you. So you get our authentic responses. So John, fire away. What you bring us, man?
So my topics here, kind of three. I think they go hand in hand. And kind of piggybacking off of some comments I've heard in some of your prior pods. Kind of where you go with these things. So I was just talking about routine, habits, and consistency. And I think what I picked up in one of the other podcasts is what you're good at and what you really love, you kind of pick those things up so pretty easily. But when there's something maybe you're not too into or other things get in the way, how do you work through those struggles and get those new habits into your brain to just be, habits and second nature.
Yeah. No, I love it.
I know in my life I have, some areas where it just comes super easy and other areas where it's just really constant struggle. And sometimes I'm just at a loss.
Yeah. No, consistency I think is so key to, success over long term, right? It's funny, we were joking about this this weekend actually. I tend to be somebody that kind of throws myself all in or all out, right? So I get the struggle that you're talking about, where the things that maybe aren't exciting you, or how do you ensure that you continue with that? I've got some ideas around it personally, but before I jump into that, I want to kind of pick Shan and Colby's ideas too, just because right now I just think it's really interesting that they both are going through all these changes. And, obviously consistency is going to be something they have to figure out and focus on, I'm sure, with all the big life changes. So I'm curious to hear what you guys have to say before I throw anything in there.
It's going to be a tough one for me, for sure. It's definitely a struggle I deal with a lot. And we talked about it a little bit a few episodes back, about knowing kind of everyone knows what they need to do, whether or not it be like a motivational factor, or whether or not it just be like a day-to-day, like here's a daunting task, keeping up with laundry, whatever. We all know what we need to do. It's just like finding the drive to do it. And for me, it's been all about like putting my ego aside and just acknowledging my weaknesses. So for instance, like keeping up with the lawn, right? Like I really did. I tried like managing that myself. I tried getting into, I even tried like getting cool, like electrical tools that make like, the weed eating a little bit more like interesting, and just kind of pull a drive for it. But honestly, at the end of the day, for me, I had to acknowledge that, hey, this is just one of the things where like it's probably best spent outsourcing. And then in trade of that, what I do, I play a game, right? Like if I'm going to pay someone to take care of my lawn, I'm going to somehow try to get back that $50 a month, right? Like I'm going to put energy towards something, whether it be business oriented or like professional growth, something like that. So and we talk about this a lot too. I do a weekly coaching session with Josh, and he can attest that a lot of the inconsistencies that I kind of drive myself or I face, they end up being the topic of the coaching session. And that's another way. Like I'll put my ego aside. I will acknowledge that there's just some things that are tough to handle on a regular basis, and just get the motivation for. And when I highlight it, it just seems to be a little bit easier to knack.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of things that I think relate to this. But at least for me, like starting off in our new situation, a lot of it's just being very mindful of the insidious things that you can start to do that will become habits. Like you're more mindful, or you can be more mindful of what you're doing throughout the day, right? Like how are you going to wake up every day? How are you going to go to sleep every day? What times are you going to do those things? Are you going to start, having like a daily schedule that you lay out for yourself, either morning or night, like all those sorts of things, right? Because especially when you're in a new environment, it's a perfect time to do all that stuff, because you don't have any ingrained habits. It's all new. So I think that's like, if you have a blank slate, like it's way easier to do that. And I think it becomes increasingly harder as you have more routine already in your life, because you only have a set amount of time and something always has to give. Like there has to be, you have to, carve out more time and maybe take away time from other things that you're currently doing in order to make time for this new thing. So I think like that's a really important consideration. But I think Shan brought up a really good point about him outsourcing his yard work, because I think a lot of us have ideas of habits or things that we'd really like to do or get done during our day, but we don't really have any heart in it, really. Like it's just something that's like, oh, abstractly, yeah, that would be really nice if I did that every day, right? But in reality, I never want to take the time to do that thing each day. So I think having your priorities straight and really asking yourself if that's something you want to be serious about is really important, because I think it's too easy to like get distracted by all these, I don't know, it's organizational niceties almost, where they're nice to have, but I don't even think a lot of the times they're necessary. I think a lot of us sometimes just get jealous of others who seem extremely productive, but like you're not actually seeing the actual work that's being done every day comparatively to you. So I think it's also important to keep that consideration in your brain. Just because someone looks more productive doesn't mean they are being more productive. So I just think that's a few things you gotta at least be mindful of at the start.
Yeah, those are great points. And, I think about I completely agree with, if you can outsource something that you don't enjoy, then, and you have that opportunity, that's a great way to kind of get around some of those. So, like I have a pool. I don't really want to clean my pool. I let somebody else handle that because I used to do my own, and I got to where I hated the pool. And, so I realized that. But there's other things that you obviously can't outsource, right? If I wanted to get in better shape, I can't pay someone to go run for me. So what I have learned to do is over the years is really lean into my strengths and kind of mitigate those weaknesses. And what I mean by that is, yes, when I'm trying to be consistent, I may not find a lot of enjoyment in, say, mowing the lawn, or doing the laundry, or, doing that work task that's not exciting. But I do enjoy checking things off of a list, right? So I kind of, I guess, play a game similar to what Shan was saying about, like, he figures out how to make it fun to get that money back because that excites him. And so he's accomplishing the task by leveraging something that does excite him. And I do a similar thing, right? If it's tasks that I don't necessarily want to do, I may, and this is one example, there's other ways, but I might write down all of those items that I have to do on a list. And I do get pleasure and excitement out of kind of crossing off my list and getting it all done at the end of the day and throwing it away. If you ever saw my work desk, it's usually covered in Post-it notes because it's like the thing I have to do. And I get an immense satisfaction out of crumbling up the little Post-it note and throwing it away. Although, a couple of trees may suffer, so maybe I could go digital on that. But, there's something to it. I kind of force myself to leverage the things that do excite me to keep going. John, do you have any tricks that you use, or, is this purely you're trying to get some tricks?
I'm very much the same as you with the physical paper. And I think one of the reasons that I brought this up is recently I've just been struggling because I've been trying to go the digital route and just not working. Like, I need to have things in my face. I need to see them in front of me on a piece of paper. And I think the struggle I have is, in the digital is I have to go find that thing. And if it's not in front of my face, I'm not going to go find it. Right. So that's kind of where I'm struggling on that. So I was actually really eager to talk about that a little bit. Kind of imagining that. And I think one of the other things I enjoy about listening to this group is we're kind of very similar service delivery type teams and those routines that we have to get in, but we also have to deal with the unknown is constantly getting thrown at us, and, operations before projects. Right. Yeah. So, those kind of things always get in the way of the routine.
Yeah. And my wife and I will have this conversation about the digital versus the paper, right? She loves to have a paper calendar. We even have a big whiteboard calendar, like, out in the hall. And I'm like, can we switch to an electronic calendar? Because, then I can see it in real time. I have it with me all the time, but it's not something she enjoys. So I started to look for some digital options as well. And I found it, unfortunately, it was discontinued, so I never got to try it out, but it was actually a paper calendar that you could write on with a special pen that would update your electronic calendar. And I thought I had solved our challenge, but again, it was discontinued. So I'm going to assume it didn't work that well. But I struggle in the same way sometimes, where I am trying to figure out how do I combine the digital with the paper side of things. And what I have found over time is one of the things that works super well for me is kind of a pseudo replacement of the old string around your finger. So I've got my phone and, my assistant here, I'll just say, hey, set a reminder for tomorrow at 3 p.m. or set an alarm for 2 p.m. and, kind of give it a name. And that seems to work well for me when those one-off items come up. The things that maybe I don't write on a list, but I'm out somewhere and I need to remember to do that tomorrow. Maybe make that doctor's appointment for the kids, or, follow up on that project or reach out to that friend, whatever the item is. I've found that has been super helpful. The only thing that's important is making sure you name the alarm, because there's nothing worse at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, your alarm goes off and you're like, what was that for? I have no idea what that's for. So that has happened occasionally. But that's been kind of a trick I've used to combine the digital with the physical.
I've actually had the exact opposite on the paper calendar argument with my wife. And since I want the paper one, you know where our calendar is.
Yeah.
It's on the phone.
It's in the, yeah, I was going to say it's electronic. Mine's on paper. So I get it. I'll take a picture of her calendar to carry around with me, so I have my electronic version. But Colby, any experience blending the, I feel like you're a little younger, of the group here, so you might just have been born in digital. There were these things called notebooks, and you could write down appointments and things. It was amazing. Oh, I can't hear you, man.
Sorry, I was muted. Yeah, I do use paper notes, actually. So for me, it's actually vice versa to what you do, although I do like your idea and I'm going to steal it. I usually tend to write stuff down like you do with sticky notes. That's more short-term tasks that I need to complete, and then more long-term things that I need to keep track of over time. I much prefer it electronically because I just feel like I can rely more on it. I'm always really worried about losing a post-it note or a piece of paper, but if it's like a short thing that I know I'm going to get done soon, I don't mind, because like the likelihood of something like that happening or being misplaced is very low. But anything that needs to be done tomorrow or in the next couple of days, someone could like mess around, because like at my last job, it was kind of like more of a communal space. Like you didn't really have like your own setup necessarily, so I couldn't really trust my own workspace necessarily, so I didn't really like relying on that too much for those more important items. But I definitely really I definitely, there's something to writing something down also for your brain. You definitely remember it way more than just typing it out. I still find that, even like my typing skills are fantastic. I can type way faster than I can write by a country mile. But it's still, if I need to like ingrain something in my brain, it also helps like writing it down on a sticky note too, because it's like more at the forefront of my memory throughout the day as well. But it's definitely hard to go only one direction. I don't think that going only one direction, like paper or all electronic, is actually the best way to go. I think you should always have like a mixture of both, depending on what's the right tool for the job, because I don't think every electronic productivity app really is like the best tool for every situation. Like sometimes just writing it down real quick is much more helpful.
Yeah, and more efficient.
Yeah.
And Shan mentioned earlier, that he struggles with consistency, but I think also he's his own worst critic, right? Because as much as he's quote unquote struggles with it, he also has managed to maintain, multiple businesses for long periods of time, and been successful with them. So there's, and that was long before he and I ever started coaching. So he is, and I think that's a key to consistency that I want to hear Shan's viewpoint on too, because for me, consistency is not, 3 days. It's not 7 days. It's not even a month, right? It's progress over time. It's the continued efforts over time towards an intended goal, or pursuit, right? And Shan, I think you do that. I think you are probably your worst critic when it comes to that. But, I'm just curious what your thoughts are over long-term consistency, because you don't seem to struggle in that.
Well, that's kind of the point I was trying to make earlier, really, is kind of like a shadow of Colby's point. Like there's a trade-off, and it depends on what your priorities are. Because, yeah, sure, you could say that. I had the two businesses and it seems like I'm always productive. But if you like come over to my house and check out like my lawn or something like that, or you don't know any of that, you would think the opposite, right? Like, what does this guy do? He can't take care of his hedges or lawn on a regular basis. So it really is a trade-off, and it comes down to prioritizing for me. But when John initially asked the question on like handling consistency, you just, to me, there's always going to be that trade-off, and you just can't have that mindset for absolutely everything unless you have some sort of heavy determination to be consistent with every single thing you do. But I guess it just depends on what you're okay with not being consistent about. And sometimes I'm not. Sometimes I'm not consistent, or I'm not okay with not being consistent about like more of the everyday tasks. But when it comes to things that kind of are driven by determination, or like that I have a lofty end goal, it's a whole different story for me.
That makes a lot of sense.
I definitely think it needs to be drilled down to like the identity level for each person, because when you, especially like when it's not just like task oriented stuff that you're doing, and it's much more like I'm changing almost who I am as a person longer term is kind of the idea, with more, I guess, like lifestyle changes or like productivity changes or something like, especially like going to the gym is a great one too, right? Like when you go to the gym, like, yeah, sometimes people are just like, I'm going to go to the gym for X amount of time to achieve X like body style, and then I'm done. Like I'm just going to quit, and it's good enough for 3-5 years, whatever it is, right? But most of the time it's like, hey, I want to be healthy long term, so I'm going to go to the gym long term, right? And at that level, I think you actually like have to ask the questions in your head of like, why am I doing this? What is it for? How will it impact my life positively in the next year, 6 months, 5 years, 10 years down the line? And then also like lining up, what's going to happen if I don't do this? What's going to happen in 1 year? What's going to happen in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? What am I going to look like 20 years down the line if I continue to put this off? And like have, both that sort of positive vision and negative vision of what your future could look like if you didn't do that thing, right? Because I think when you visualize that viscerally, you will absolutely get that shit done, right? Because it means that much to you, right? You see everything for what it is and how it's going to impact you. And if it doesn't elicit that response, well, maybe it's not as high of a priority that you may have thought that initially was, right? If it doesn't actually give you the positive outcomes that you want in your life, well, don't iterate on it or don't include it into your life, because it's just going to be needless noise. And I think once you do that, it's much easier. I don't think it's, set in stone that you will do it, but I think it's much easier to do that when you have that in that position. But I think too, I think Shan may have mentioned this, but just doing it and not caring if it's bad at the start, because everything you start off doing is bad. Like you're going to start off going to the gym. You're going to be bad at it. You're not going to know how to do certain exercises. You're going to not be able to lift a lot of weights. You're not going to be able to run for very long or very fast. That's okay. Like it gets better with time. It's training, it's not instant. And that doesn't just include going to the gym. That's pretty much almost any endeavor that you'll ever do in life, is that you'll be really bad at the first, even podcasting, at the start of a podcast, it's, you feel a little bit awkward. You don't really know what you're doing, and you're just trying to figure stuff out. And hopefully, we'll let the listeners decide, but hopefully it's gotten better over time, and hopefully it continues to get better.
Yeah, let us know what you think about in the comments, because we'd love to know if we're getting better. Hopefully somewhere. So one of the things, I was thinking of as you were covering all of that is, you said it, just do it, right? You can spend time thinking about it or taking action on it. But I'm curious, what are some of the roadblocks that you guys see to consistent behavior? Because I think if we can identify some of those roadblocks, we can probably also talk about maybe some strategies to overcome those specific items. So, John, I'm going to throw it back your way to kind of kick us off here. What do you think are some of the roadblocks to consistency?
I think definitely, distractions. For me, that's the thing. It's going to the gym. That's not a problem for me. That's one of the things I need. I started on my 39th birthday CrossFit, and I've been going 3 to 5 days ever since. Exactly for what you were saying, long-term health. Initially, it was, get strong, be faster than my kids, keep up with them. But it's turned into, long-term health, not, kill it every day, lift as much as I can. But this is really, benefit forever. For me, it's the little things like, just the little habits of the organization. There's always some other easier thing to distract you, or just go back to your old ways. And it's, the set in your ways. There's little distractions. There's just always something else you could rather do, whether it's scrolling on the phone or, watching a show, or just taking on some other task that takes your mind away from what you should be doing.
Yeah.
Those are the tricky things.
Mm.
Definitely. No, I found myself sitting down the other day. My son and I were in, he pulled up some TikTok video, and I swear 15, 20 minutes went by before we even realized,
Yeah.
we were headed somewhere. And I was like, oh my goodness, man, what happened to the time? So it's very easily to get distracted in different things. And, that's just one example, but there's tons of things that life throws at us. And I think that's where kind of the giving yourself a little grace comes along too, because that's what I was getting at or alluding to earlier, that consistency is really over a long period of time, right? Hopefully, John, let's say you go on vacation and maybe you're really dedicated and hit CrossFit while you're on vacation. But if you took a couple weeks off, it's a possibility that maybe you don't hit CrossFit at least 3 to 5 times. And, when you get back, though, you start it right back up. So I don't think that little break would say that there wasn't consistency.
Right.
But I think I think we're so quick to judge ourselves when we aren't quote unquote consistent, right? Because we take a break. And sometimes that's needed. It's kind of kicked off the podcast with what's up this week about my publishing. And, one of the things I do enjoy is writing and doing things like that. I took, a multi-year break, but I would still say I've been consistent with it because I did it 5 years ago. I'm doing it now. There's a break in there, but when I look back at my entire life, a couple of books, hopefully a couple of more, at least some periodicals, some thesis papers, like it's a consistent theme throughout my life that I write. Even though if you were to look at the 2 years past, you wouldn't probably see that.
Yeah, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good situation, for sure.
Wow.
I didn't come up with that. My college professor did. It's just really
nice.
Poignant, but it's always stuck with me.
That's going to be a short.
Yeah.
We use that one frequently.
Yeah.
The perfect instead of the good, and the analysis paralysis and all that kind of fun stuff. That's common theme by us.
Yeah.
It's easy to get caught up in those things.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, I mean, I know, the only other thing I would mention too is at least for me, I don't know, it's just mindfulness, training almost, throughout the days. I think it was back in college that I really started to pay attention, but just to I would kind of mentally make note of how long things were taking or how I was using my time throughout the day, and just kind of reflect at the end, be like, okay, how much time did I spend doing things, and what was my emotional response during each of them, right? When I was watching TV, I would literally just sit there and be like, am I do I like this? Is this am I enjoying my free time doing this? Or do I feel like I would enjoy doing something different instead? And I started to do that. And the more I did it, it helped me with spacing out on my phone or watching TV that I just really even wasn't interested in. But also it would even apply to eating junk food and stuff, right? I would start to eat sweets or junk food, and I'd be like, how good is this really? And knowing what it's doing to me, because I was trying to be more cognizant of what I was eating at the time, is it worth it? And then over time I realized these foods are totally worth splurging over, and then these foods totally aren't, and it actually reduced the overall amount of junk that I was eating quite substantially. And I think it goes for your free time and getting distracted as well, because I think when you start to realize man, that just took 20 minutes, right? And so it's now I'm very allergic to my phone. I almost never want to be on it. I don't have pretty much any social media platforms, etc., because I know that even with YouTube shorts, sometimes I'll get lost 30 minutes doing that. I'm like God dang it, I didn't want to do that.
What have I done?
So I need to click the YouTube home button really quick so I can get out of there, close out YouTube as I start to notice it, because it's if you're not intentional with your time, you'll just get pulled along by something, and then it's just then it's not really yours at the end of the day. So it's definitely you have to be disciplined, but you also do have to forgive yourself when you slip up, so to speak, or are less strict about certain things, because that happens. You're human. Everyone's human. Everyone does it. It's just sometimes you don't get to see that side of them.
Right. And I think it's somewhere there's plenty of books that say it takes a couple of weeks to actually form a habit of doing something long periods of time, because what you're doing essentially is kind of rewiring your subconscious to a degree, right? You're making a conscious effort for those first 2 weeks because it's not something that comes naturally, or possibly longer, depending on the frequency of that activity. But you have to consciously say, okay, I'm going to do this, until it becomes so ingrained in you, like Colby, you were just talking about, like you're, quote unquote, allergic to your phone, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's not where you started, I'm sure.
Yep.
But you kind of evaluated your situation, realized what your priorities were, decided what you wanted to do and change, and then you took action to start trying to drive that forward, and ultimately eventually that became your I guess go-to behavior.
Yep.
Right? And I think that's a big part of the consistency. And we see it every year in January, right? Everybody throws a New Year's resolution out there, and then they miss a day, or they miss a couple days, and then by then they figure all is lost. But it's not, because you can just restart. I don't personally even make New Year's resolutions, because I figure if I think of something I want to do, I'm going to try to start tomorrow.
They're excuses. To wait until I think they can be toxic in a sense, because you'll put off going to the gym or something for 3 months until January. And I think exactly what you said, and Colby made it sound way too easy, but in a sense, I think the biggest detractor for being consistent is the inability to break bad habits. And you talked, Josh, a lot about creating new habits and how it might take weeks, months to ingrain them into you. But the bigger piece for me is tackling the bad habit and not just ignoring it. So for like the gym example, for instance, you get home at 5 o'clock from work. You're normally watching TV, or you're normally playing video games right away. Like that's your regular daily routine. If you're wanting to take John's approach and start CrossFit, you got from 5 to 7, basically. CrossFit's not all night. So you have to start really diving in and breaking those bad habits in order to make time for the new good habits. So like, let's say you do the trade-off. It's like, oh, I'll watch TV on a different day. And you do CrossFit, and then you do CrossFit until you hit your goal. But then you're in John's stage where it's like, all right, this is now about like I'm healthy. I look good. I don't have a huge, like close-ended goal, but I want to maintain a healthy lifestyle. That's when the bad habits of watching TV or video games can easily catch back up, because then you're comparing the two, right? 5 o'clock hits the clock, and you're either like, I can either go to CrossFit and maintain my consistency, or I can just relax and watch TV. And which one's going to win? That's the bigger daunting task to me, is try to tackle those bad habits and take care of them for good, because if you kind of just leave them in the back burner, they can catch back up with you.
Yeah, I imagine, John, that's why you kind of changed your objective, right? Because originally you said it was to be strong, look good, all that, and now then it became long-term health, right? Because you hit the goal and you were like, okay, well, how do I keep on this track? So do you find that thinking about the end goal helps you with that consistency?
Yeah, definitely with the gym. I mean, that and my knees hurt. So, if I push too hard, they hurt more. But yeah, I mean, it just becomes about, I've kind of set a goal and with my friends, and they laughed. And it was just recently, we were talking about something. My friend's mother is not doing well. So I said, I'm going to live till I'm 105. So they're like, well, how did you pick that number? I said, I don't know. It sounds achievable. I think I could do it. So I said 120. That's not realistic. But that's kind of it. The long term, the steady pace, the long haul, just keep moving type of mentality is what I've kind of shifted to.
How do you feel about 115? So that's my
115.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. That's probably doable.
That's my target. I just want to be able to, have lived through 3 centuries and 2 millennium. That's really
I'll be happy with 75. The way I pound energy drinks, 75 would be beautiful.
Good luck.
Shan's actually gonna kick it at 70, and those energy drinks are gonna carry him through the next 5 years.
You know, I did see some crazy. I don't believe it, but like some crazy study where like taurine is causing men to like live longer, and taurine's like found in like a lot of the larger energy drinks. I'm like, oh man, they're just begging me to keep drinking these things.
You can find a study for anything.
Yeah, you really can.
One thing I did want to bring up that we haven't really touched on yet that I actually think is one of the bigger reasons why people go back to bad habits or fail to start new ones is actually friends and family. I think when you start up doing something new and your life changes, it's not always out of this reason, but it's not always out of ill intent. Sometimes it's just they're just like you're like weird now, like, you know, they're not used to you doing what you're doing in your life, and they're like, why are you doing that? And they don't mean why as in like why would you do that, like what's the point. They mean they're just like, you know, what's the reason. But I think a lot of us like take it like that, and I think it can be really hard because like you feel like you got to have your answers ready for them, right? And you're kind of insecure about it potentially as well. And like I know that's something that at least like especially when I was younger than I am now, like that was like a big thing for me because I think I was just like super self-conscious of what other people would think if I made major life changes, and you know people, you know, would maybe they, you know, wouldn't like those changes, or you just don't know what sort of friction you're gonna really get. And I'm curious like how you guys, if you feel like that's the case in your lives, or how you've dealt with it, if so.
No,
Yes.
I can definitely say that I agree with that, right? And I think part of it's because you're breaking the habits that they have on how they view you, right? So, but it's a little different because when you're trying to create a new habit, it's your choice. When you're forcing a new lens to someone else, it can be difficult. And I honestly, I think it's kind of what you said. You know, unfortunately, at the end of the day, you're doing the habits that you think are right for you, making those choices. You have to be confident enough to continue to push through, even if you don't feel like everyone's in your corner, or maybe they are in your corner, but it's just, you know, they're perceiving you in a different light, and it does. To your point, you know, you might be subconscious because maybe it's the first time you're in the gym and you can't lift, you know, a bunch, or you can't run that mile, or, you know, whatever the case might be. So you feel a little bit, I don't know, to throw it back to another pod, right? You feel a little bit like that imposter syndrome's kicking in. But I think you just kind of have to have the confidence to trust that what you're doing is ultimately better for you. And there was one time, Colby, you said, you know, that basically just that doing the thing over and over and over again, that consistency portion is going to leave you better off than you would have been if you hadn't done it. So I think you just have to keep that end goal in mind and be enough support for yourself when you're trying to bring on a new habit. So
Yeah.
that's my 2 cents on it anyway.
That makes sense. What about you, John or Shan?
I was gonna say I haven't had too many habits that have been, you know, too obvious to other people that they would question why, or, you know, determine. I mean, you know, the gym was a big one, you know, a while back, but, you know, it's hard because I had to squeeze it in at the time. I had 2 kids that were, let's see, about 8 years now. So my son was probably in 2nd grade, the other one in kindergarten or something like that. So it was just a lot going on. So it's like, you know, I had to go at 5 a.m. I was working, you know, into the city at full time, you know, commuting an hour and a half each way. So it was, you know, I wanted to do this. I had to do it. And that was the only time between 5 and 6 o'clock in the morning. It was either that or it wasn't happening. And of course, you know, if you join CrossFit, everyone's like, oh, you're joining a cult and all that fun stuff. But other than that, you know, it's little things like, you know, checking my start emails at the end of the day, and not anything that anyone really notice or generally care about, or did I get through all my Slack messages or that kind of stuff. And those are the little habits that irk at me these days.
Yeah.
So
it's more the little things nagging at you rather than these large habits. It's kind of that fine tuning of, you know, the stone in the river, if you will, smoothing out the edges.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm pretty good at big things. I think I drive my wife a little crazy sometimes with the big things that I change. But
yeah, I feel like with those smaller ones, to me, I've found that it's just about reducing all the friction that I possibly can from those items and making them as easy as possible for me, and like putting them at times of the day that make the most sense, like when I'm the most ready to do those specific items, or have them on my desk in a certain way that I will look at them first, or like those sorts of things. Because I feel like with little items, it's not that they're never really hard to do. It's just like you don't really want to do them a lot of the times, and it's like it'd be great to do, but it's like they're not really ingrained in your habits. So I feel like I usually try to analyze what sort of like the friction is between like me and getting to do it, and reduce that as much as possible.
Mhm.
I don't know what you guys think about that, but at least for me, like that's always the biggest thing, because I always just find them kind of annoying. So if I can reduce the startup time to them, it just feels much easier to accomplish them.
Yeah, no, when I remember Shan and I having a few conversations before, we even launched the podcast and things, he'd be like, hey, you should do this, you should be doing this stuff. And I was really nervous to pick up some items because of just, I wanted to make sure I could be consistent. And I think I took the approach you're talking about, Colby, where, I really looked at how can I make this as simple of a process as possible. So even when I think about like the podcast, when we launched it, right, I made sure to, kind of get technical for a second, but I put the RSS feeds in between all of the different systems. So I really only have to update one area and it posts to all the different platforms. I use, some AI tools to help kind of create the shorts, and the tool I use actually posts to all of my socials at once with a click of a button. So I knew if I was going to be able to be consistent with this, with my family and my, everything else I've got going on, I had to reduce that friction and make it more of a seamless experience for me to be able to invest my time and make that happen.
Yeah.
Shan, you have any tricks or tips around that?
No, I think a lot what Colby said. I'm really weird when it comes to this subject, because like I love a new challenge, right? But I deal with the same struggles and determination and consistency issues as everyone else. But I take a very, very weird approach to things, and it's kind of broken down with what Colby mentioned. Like for instance, I did when I tried to take care of my lawn. Like I tried to get. I mean, we're all, except for Colby, and he's a cat dad, so he counts. We're all dads here, right? Like new tools, that's exciting, right? You just want to go and use it, even if it is doing something you hate. So for the lawn stuff, I really did try to get some new gear to kind of make it a little bit more interesting to do it. The way I learned the guitar was probably the largest and loftiest investment of my life, because what I would do, and it works so well, and I'm glad I don't do it anymore. Like everyone who goes to play the guitar, they play for 2-3 weeks and then they put it down, they never touch it again. Right. So I had a system set up to where every time I would pick up the guitar and play it for a few weeks, and then I'd stop, I would purchase another one, because I got so excited when I bought another guitar. And that's why I have 6 guitars right now. I used to have 8. I got rid of a couple, but I had 6. Where I literally, like every time I bought a new guitar, boom, another 2 months. Like I'm entertained. I'm loving it. I'm trying to learn like everything about it. I love the way it sounds, literally. And then 2 months would go by and stop again. And then unfortunately, I'd have to make another purchase. But what it did teach me is that, okay, like you're going to go broke completely if you don't learn to be consistent. And
Oh my God.
Pick up like once a week, maybe not a lot, but at least I do it. And beforehand, it would have never.
I mean, in a weird way, that's you're kind of, we were talking about reducing the friction and, some positive reinforcement. Well, you kind of created friction to not do the wrong thing, because if you weren't consistent, I kind of like it, to be honest. If you weren't consistent, I mean, it doesn't work everywhere. If I don't want to go out and sit in traffic, I can't just buy a new car every time to make it a little more exciting drive. But guitars, right. I can see it working.
Yeah, you have to figure out what works, right?
Yeah.
Like, and for me, go ahead, John.
Sorry, I was just thinking while you were saying, actually, what Colby was saying, just putting a little pressure on yourself, which is exactly where you went. Where others are relying on you. I mean, I think it's clear here, maybe it's not, that some of my organization skills is where I'm struggling. But this year I put a goal for myself is to keep all my team meetings, notes for them, meeting minutes and all that kind of stuff. So put that pressure where I feel like if I don't have those meeting notes ready to go at the beginning of the meeting with the agenda, the old business, the new business, then I'm letting the team down. So I've kind of used that as a little pressure for myself. I don't like spending money and making myself go broke, so I'll just use other people to put pressure on myself.
It's very unorthodox, but I operate well when my back's against the wall. So unfortunately, and I'm not organized at all. Like, I'm probably the worst guy to ever take any advice from, but very, very unorganized.
I told you guys, authentic conversation.
No, I mean, it's true. We talked about it earlier. I mean, you guys talked about how you maintain your calendars, how you like pick up on like adaptive and organized skills. For me, like, I put myself in a situation to where like it's high stress or no stress. So like, for instance, we talk about like something you need to knock out. Like, I try to put it into the position to where it has to get done right now. Yeah. Right. Like, if something pops up and like it needs to be done, like I could schedule it out. Sure. But I don't check a calendar. Like, I don't keep up with that. I try to do the best I can. I'm not terrible at it, but again, it's all about, for me, putting my ego aside and acknowledging where like my weaknesses are, and then try to play my strengths as hard as I can. And I like, if my back's against the wall, or I'm up against stress, or something like bad happens, it's a big opportunity for me. So I have to create it, unfortunately, for everyday stuff, like playing a guitar. I have to manifest and create the scenario to where like some kind of pressure or heavy obligation is put against me.
Well, if there's one thing we've definitely learned this podcast, is that Shan is a masochist. And that is 100% verified and confirmed.
Oh, man. Well, I can't think of a better place to circle around for our final thoughts based on that revelation. John, I'm going to kick it to you, man, for first go on these final thoughts. Hey, hopefully we answered kind of the topic you brought here about ways to be a little more consistent, how to overcome some of those challenges, and maybe even how to set some new habits. But want to hear how we did, and any final thoughts you might have.
No, this was great. I think it was good just to hear what you guys go through, the different perspectives. Final thoughts is, there's someone who's just as unorganized as me. I wouldn't say that I put undue stress on myself, but all week I was kind of putting on myself to jot down a couple of ideas on paper to bring today, and I wound up reading an SOP for something instead, and I came with nothing. So,
well, you didn't let us down.
I wrote down routine, habits, and consistency on the top. So I very much the same as you, Shan.
The pressure came on and you had it. Real world application. I love it.
If nothing, you validated my bad habits.
We are what we are.
Oh, Colby, how about you, man? What do you got for us?
Yeah, so I guess final thing that I'll mention is something that I think is an important element as well that I use personally is this. I didn't invent this phrase, but it's like, basically it's the idea is like your mental stack, like your mental bandwidth that you can, like the amount of things that you can focus on at a given time. And I think what happens is when we try to do these new habits, there's too many things that are on our brain, like on our mind already, that we can't make enough mental bandwidth for this one thing. So I think one thing that you can try to do is figure out how to automate, or at least make those things brainless to where you don't need to focus on them, so that you have that bandwidth and availability to focus on those things. Because right, like sometimes you just have too much crap going on in your life, man. Like there's just way too much going on, and you can't force every little thing to happen just because you want it, or you really want it, or you'd like to have it, etc. Like, so you do have to keep that in mind. Only a certain amount of things can be focused on at a given point. And if there's too much going on in your life for whatever reason, right, kids, like you're saying, John, or anything that could be going on in your life changes, etc., give yourself a little bit of grace and recognize that like maybe you'll have some chance in the future to focus on those items. But it's just an important consideration that I wanted to get out there as a final thought.
For sure. Shan, sir, what you got for us?
No, really, my key takeaway is, again, to kind of like lower your ego and learn to play your strengths and acknowledge your weaknesses, because you're not going to be consistent in everything. But what can be really beneficial to your day-to-day life is you can prioritize and identify what you should be consistent with on a regular basis, because then at least you can come up with some kind of unorthodox plan if you're like me, or if you're organized. come up with those automation ideas or those calendar scheduling ideas to kind of make it more realistic. But for me, it really comes down to, like, a lot of people, we keep going back to the gym because the gym's an important one, right? A lot of people will just go and say, I'm going to get in shape. And then that's it. And they'll try, they'll do their best, and it won't last because, unfortunately, like, your ego's involved with that. And you say, I'm going to get in shape. What does that mean? You have no idea what it means. You just want to, felt good saying it. You felt good telling other people it, but really break it down and figure out, can I make this a consistent effort? And if I can't, how can I manifest it? And how can I build some kind of lofty goal or system to where it becomes realistic to the way I am, not just like, or not just like universal in a sense, because some things will work for others and some will work for yourself.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. And, I'll just kind of round things up here with, I think for me, consistency really does play a factor at how you look at it. Are you looking at it for a week? Are you looking at it for a month, a year, a decade, a lifetime? Because you could argue that even the folks that, only hit that New Year's resolution period of a couple weeks each year, I mean, they're being consistent over a lifetime. A couple weeks a year is helping them in some way or fashion. So, kind of circling back to what Colby said about giving yourself some grace. Think about what that consistency means. Just because you miss a day doesn't mean it's all gone. You can pick up tomorrow. You can pick up next week. Just obviously you don't want to wait too long in between because it gets harder and harder to pick up. And if your goal is consistency, the more often you can commit to something and do it is obviously going to reinforce that subconscious behavior and make it kind of your norm. So with that being said, I don't think I could end the podcast without saying, if you missed a couple episodes of Mastermind for the Masses, it's okay. We still think you're consistent. So just join us here each week and listen along, share with your friends because we're here to add value to as many people as possible. And that's how people are going to find out about us. So I want to thank John again for being with us. Great topic tonight, sir. Thanks for bringing it to us. And everyone else, we'll see you next time on Mastermind for the Masses.